It is it's great to be here. And Arthur, you're not from Argentina, are you? No. Okay, never been there. Any Argentinians here? Okay. If you could just cover your ears for a moment. I listen, the first of all, I think as somebody that has been following the English Premier League in obscurity and waking up at 7 a.m. on Saturday mornings and screaming and having people coming in, what is wrong with you? It's pretty remarkable that 65 million people saw the World Cup final. And that is second only to the viewership of the Super Bowl. So soccer may have finally, football, as we aficionados call it, may have finally made its way to America. I thought Spain was the thing I loved about Spain, and I'm not a big fan usually of Spain, soccer, but they were an extraordinary team. When they won in 2010, they kept showing the 2010 team, and they looked like these aging rock stars. They were these beautiful men with long hair and, looked like, part Bee Gees, part Led Zeppelin. And you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, I remember them. But they were all these huge stars. This Spanish team wasn't. It was a team, and it was extraordinary. They outplayed everybody. They were always 3 steps ahead because everybody put the team over themselves. So I thought it was an extraordinary performance because I think most of us thought the French were unbeatable. And then we saw Spain and said, well, who's gonna touch them? Maybe Messi, maybe not. As for Argentina, I'm sorry. The display was shameful. It was a bad game. The fight afterwards, listen, here's the deal. Fights happen. They just do in hockey and football, whatever. So it's hard for me sitting at home judging somebody who's been humiliated in front of like 200 million people. So I'm not going to judge them. I'm just not. I wouldn't do it. But these are kids. I can look past that. I cannot. I'm so glad you asked this question, Arthur. I cannot look past Argentina turning their backs on Spain when Spain received the trophy. You know what? And I don't want to insult anybody. I don't know. Maybe 95% of you are MAGA people. But listen, here's the deal. I respect good winners, but I really respect good losers. People that can be knocked to the ground, pick themselves up, show dignity, show respect for the game, and say, all right, you knocked me down. I'll be back. We'll get you next time. And I didn't see that with Argentina. So anyway, and Cape Verde, holy cow. First of all, that match was extraordinary. And then I don't know that I've ever seen a sporting event that ever teetered so closely between sporting event and riot as England in Mexico City. That was crazy. And I'm just glad the English lived to play another game and do what the English always do in football, choke. Now, this time it was the manager. So anyway, listen, I'm going to talk really fast because I've got a lot of things to say, but I really want to answer your questions. And by the way, they want to give me written questions. No. I stand up, shout them out. And if you want to be mean, that's fine. I've learned to be tough. I'm married to a Brzezinski. So speaking of Brzezinskis, Mark Brzezinski is here. Mr. Ambassador. I think by this point, Mark has been ambassador to about half the countries in Europe. So very distinguished. But let me just say, Mika and I, when we started, I didn't know Mika. I didn't know the family, but it's very safe to say you all know them very well. I mean, they came here every year since 1967, but I can tell you it was a shock to me. They're a tough, tough lot. The first person I met in Mika's family was Ian. I met him at a Christmas party at Tim Russert's house. And I said to him, I just started working with Mika. I said, she's fantastic. She's so great. She's intelligent. Ian cut me off and he said, Mika had the lowest score in the history of Williams College. Lowest SAT score. There she goes. Fast forward like 30 years later, and she got the Centennial Medal or something from him. Just an absolute disgrace for anybody who ever studied in their life. But anyway, I'm joking. So they're just that way. And then at the end of our first book tour, we're in Washington, and we invite Mrs. Brzezinksi up. And we asked Mrs. Brzezinski, who was just an extraordinary sculptor, an extraordinary woman, who we're remembering 4 years later today, passing. But I asked Mrs. Brzezinski, because we'd been on this long tour, and I thought this would be a great way to finish it up. Hey, could you come on up and tell everybody something about Mika that they didn't know? And so she came up, and Mika was just like melting. And I was like, and Mr. Prince goes, something about Mika, something. Mika had the lowest SAT score in the history of Williams College. So they're very tough people. They're very tough people. But the show worked, and the show worked because we came from different backgrounds. I was conservative from the Deep South. Mika was a liberal from the Northeast. My father coached Little League baseball games. Mika's father ran America's National Security. I was raised in a variety of Southern Baptist churches across the Deep South. Mika was raised in a variety of young Marxist League meeting houses across the greater Manhattan. But now, do you know what separates us? It was Republican and Democrat. We had civil conversations. Can I hand the mic to you, sweetie? So anyway, we had civil conversations. But now, you know what separates us? I say, as difficult as things are in this country, we're going to get through this. We're going to survive. And not only are we going to survive, we're going to learn lessons from this time, and we're going to be stronger than ever. Mika says, we're doomed. Is that right?
Yeah, we're done. Yep.
Done. Stick a fork in us, we're done. But I will tell you, we're going to be okay. And I have 32 years experience of telling people. I've spent my entire adult life as a political grief counselor. When, let's say 2008, when Barack Obama wins, and my parents are suicidal, I say, Mom, Dad, he's not going to implement Sharia law. Don't believe Glenn Beck. 2 years later, the Tea Party wins, and I've got to hug all of my weeping friends on the Upper West Side. They're not going to destroy the Constitution. We have these things called elections every 2 years. So I want you to think about this the next time you despair. Our founders, for all their flaws, pretty smart people. Think about how extremes are always balanced. 2004. I think one of the low points for a lot of liberals when George W. Bush was reelected, man, my counseling services went into overdrive after Bush won. And I was like, it's going to be okay. 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 But Karl Rove didn't help matters because he came out and he said, Republicans are going to have a permanent majority. I don't know if you remember that. That's what Karl said. 2 years later, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. 2 years later, Barack Obama's elected. And what do we hear? It is the rising. It is a coalition of the rising. Democrats will never lose another election again. They were saying it. I promise you, they were saying it. 2 years later, the Tea Party wins. And the Tea Party comes to Washington and says, we're going to change the way Washington's done. Things are going to be different from now. 2 years later, Barack Obama wins. And Mika will tell you, we have had a lot of friends in the Obama administration. And we thought they were making some mistakes. And what did I tell them when they thought the rules didn't apply to them? Do you know the 3 words?
No.
Washington always wins. You think you're going to do things your way. You think you're going to defy the laws of political gravity. It just doesn't work that way. 2 years later, the Republicans win. A sweeping landslide in 2014. Then Trump wins. And we, of course, know he was going to win forever. And then 2018 came and Nancy Pelosi speaker again. Then Joe Biden. I mean, it goes back and forth and back and forth. So am I optimistic that we'll continue this? Yes. But I do wish we could get to a stage where a party could get in power and instead of darting to an extreme, started asking questions about how can we create a majority that lasts more than 2 years? How can we appeal to people who are sick and tired of the extremes of their own party? And I was a political grief counselor tonight for Courtney, right? Courtney was like, my party, the Democrats, they're electing all of these extremists. And I reminded her, though, that the Democrats have had problems for a very long time. I reminded her of Will Rogers' quote, who said, I don't belong to an organized party. I'm a Democrat. Well, the same applies in a lot of ways to what we're seeing in both parties right now. That said, for me, there's one party, and that's the party that's pro-democracy, that's pro-elections, that actually believes, just like going back to the World Cup final, that when you win, that's a great thing. But when you lose and you step up and take that defeat, if you're a man, like a man, if you're a woman, like a woman, that actually makes democracy stronger. I will tell you, and I hope I don't offend anybody, I did used to be a Republican, by the way. Al Gore used to drive me crazy. I would see him, he just drove me crazy. But let me tell you something. I sat up straight and I looked at Al Gore after the Supreme Court, the 5 Republican appointed Supreme Court members gave that election to George W. Bush. And Al Gore went on television and he stood up and he said, I may not agree with it, but I respect the rule of law. I respect the Constitution, and I wish George W. Bush all the success in the world. That is one of the most supremely pro-democracy things I've seen in my life. And we should salute him for that and continue to salute him for that. But right now, in my opinion, as a conservative that balanced the budget 4 years in a row for the only time in 100 years when we were up in Congress, I can tell you as a conservative, I'm deeply disturbed by a president that goes on the air last week and rambles on and talks about how the 2020 election was rigged. Now, I'm a dumb Southerner, I guess, a dumb country lawyer. But can somebody explain to me how it is that in 2016, Barack Hussein Obama ran a fair election? In 2024, Sleepy Joe Biden ran a fair election? But in 2020, when Donald Trump was president of the United States, now that was the time the election was rigged. Come on. and he's saying that China was trying to steal the election. He released documents, and what did the documents show? That actually China considered trying to influence the election, but then decided it was against their best interest. But Russia, by the way, please don't say Russia hoax in front of me, or you're going to get a 1-hour diatribe. It's not a hoax if Marco Rubio and the Republican Senate Intel Committee said that Donald Trump's 2016 election was a threat to American national security because of Russian influences. That's what Marco said after the election. And then the documents proved that Russia did, in fact, try to intervene in the election, tried to influence it. So that's my biggest concern. There are at times, there are times, and Mika will say this, there are times where we, I think, set our hair on fire. And in so doing, I think, every day we were too strident. So we tried to do what a Navy captain told me one time. He said, you got to separate the signal from the ground noise. And son, it's all ground noise. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is a signal. Sometimes you do have to worry. And sometimes, I have to listen to Mika, who tells me things are going bad. Coming up for a second. So I've talked about why I'm optimistic. Can you talk for a second about your concerns? Because I think there may be some people here that agree with you.
Anyone here concerned? Yeah. Okay. So I would say that when Donald Trump was running for this second time, when he won, he made a lot of promises, and he has made good on all of those promises and then some. Retribution, maybe going a little slower because the courts are there to push back, but he is absolutely looking at his rivals and any threatening institutions and trying to break them down. Do I even need to mention Doge and USAID? And I mean, we get lost so much in the conversation. The impact of those losses around the world is brutal, actually. Mass deportations that you could never imagine you'd ever see in your life, that you've never seen before. He made those promises, and he is definitely making good on that. He has a DHS that has more money than it could ever need, asking for more money while these thugs run in the streets, badly trained, and are shooting people in the streets, and are creating moments that hopefully are turning points as the places where these horrific actions happen try and push back, try and step up for the American process. We have these detention centers, which we are not giving enough. We could not give enough attention to what is happening inside these detention centers, especially with children and human beings being denied basic necessities and medical care. We have a lot of strains on the system, all promised right from Donald Trump himself. And you have people who voted for him, who you'll ask, I mean, logical people, you'll say, well, I mean, you're charging me for this construction on my house double. These tariffs, he promised these tariffs. Well, I didn't really think he was going to do it. Like, that's not an answer to me. That's not a logical answer at all.
It's not just a contractor. Yeah. We don't tell anybody, but we had lunch with Scott Bessent before he became Treasury Secretary. And he said, oh, he doesn't mean anything with the tariffs. It's a threat. It's just a negotiating tool. But Mika, we've talked back and forth about this, about that. Yes, there are all of these terrible things happening. At the same time, I look at things like, for instance, Minneapolis. And I really do believe the people of Minneapolis are going to be remembered in history as standing up at an extraordinarily important time. And still trying to do that. The people of Maine are doing it. The people of Houston are doing it. I mean, there have been moments where they have stood up and the American people have made a profound difference. And so when we're talking about all the terrible things that are happening, but how we're getting stronger because of what we're going through and what we're learning, I also look at the chords. There are times we're gonna sing a duet. T for two. Come on, sweetie. Come on. But the courts, the lower courts especially, have stood up time and time again and pushed back against the worst abuses. And by the way, I'm not talking about conservative or liberal issues. I'm talking about the United States Constitution. And I'm talking about the laws of the land. I'm talking about the 14th Amendment. I'm talking about an amendment that was ratified in 1868, and Donald Trump thought he could overturn it with a presidential executive order. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. And you don't send Marines to Los Angeles. Listen, I'm a law and order guy. Keep the Marines in their barracks. Let the cops do their jobs. That's why we pay them. And that's why the Constitution says, and that's why America has said since the 1800s, that our military is not to be used in domestic law enforcement. So there are pros. There are some sort of green shoots. Would you say some green shoots that are coming out?
Green shoots, and I want actually us to end on that, and then we'll open it up to questions. I think the biggest signal we've received in the past 1 to 2 weeks will be this speech, and I think we both agree that it is some sort of potential intention as we look ahead to the midterms. And so, what are your hopes as we head toward the midterms? And I will keep my concerns and very, very bleak outlook.
It is so bleak.
So bleak.
It's every night.
So bleak.
I'm like, honey,
no, I've been
just watch the Red Sox with me and stop telling me what they said on the 5 today, because I don't care.
Let me tell you.
Don't tell anybody, but I haven't watched prime time of cable news since Scarborough country.
I watch it obsessively.
She does.
All right, but
she does. You know, that's one of the things, Mark, that I found out about your sister when we first got married, because you don't know how somebody's going to like live day in and day out until you're married to them. We get married, we come home, and I'm walking through the house, and cable news is on every TV set.
Yeah, I love it.
And I went behind and I turned it off, and she turned it back up. We don't watch cable news in prime time, especially when everybody's setting their hair on fire. But Mika loves cable news. I would be not just cable news. She literally used to search to see what nasty things people were saying about us. And I would be going to sleep at night. And as I'm going to sleep, I would hear on Mika's Instagram, Mark Levin, that commie Joe Scarborough, he's going to destroy America. And I would roll over and go, sweetie, what in the heck are you doing? But she loves listening to it.
Listen, I had a therapist tell me that you have an assignment, and your assignment is to go home and watch Fox News, and you will come back and tell me, and don't come back until you can tell me that you watch Fox News, and deep in your heart, you know that every single person you're watching is trying their best.
And this is why I don't have a therapist. I don't need to waste my money on that. But what do I hope for? First of all, Donald Trump showed his hand, and he did it in a clumsy way. And speaking of Fox News, at the end of Donald Trump's speech, even Fox News did something Fox News doesn't usually do. They said, listen, we cannot verify that anything he just said tonight was true.
Disclaimer.
I don't know if you saw that, but they said it at the end. Now, you get sued and you lose $787 million. Maybe you do those disclaimers too when people start talking about rigging the 2020 election. But they said that the next morning on Fox and Friends, they did not talk about the speech.
Avoidance.
For 3 hours. There were news stories on it. And so I actually am optimistic. Actually, CBS News, the Tiffany Network, which has been a wholly owned subsidiary of the White House communication staff since Paramount decided they wanted to merge with Warner Brothers and they needed the Trump administration to agree with it. CBS News fact-checked Donald Trump as he went along. So those are all, I think, reasons to be optimistic. What do I want this fall? All I want this fall is a fair and free election. I want ICE out of the way. I want the military out of the way. I want the National Guard out of the way. I want every American from Maine down to southern Florida, out to the West Coast, to be able to go and be able to vote. Because I can tell you, one of the first books I read was The Making of the President, 1960. And Teddy White was right. His opening scene talks about the magic of voters going out in New Hampshire and voting on election day. So I'm still a romantic about this country, about this Constitution, and about elections. So what am I hoping for? I'm hoping for a fair and free election.
Your questions, if any.
Questions? Yes.
My name is John Klein. I am also pessimistic, not because of Republican or Democrat, but really because of gerrymandering. Right. And what we have is we can go and vote, but if you can't vote for anybody who's not on the extremes, it's not very good. Right. And I don't understand how we get back to some people who, with gerrymandering, where people are not just indebted to their party, but are trying to do what's best for America. And here we have Republicans who privately say that, you know, they don't disagree. They do disagree with what Trump is doing, but they won't vote that way. So my question is, how do we get back to something where we get good candidates that we can vote for without being on the extremes? Absolutely.
Well, I think, I think you just nailed it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people talk about term limits. They talk about other reforms that you can do in Washington, D.C. I think gerrymandering is the biggest challenge right now that we face. And the reason why is because when I was in Congress from 94 to 2001, you still had to work with the other side to get something passed. And I was considered at the time, I know it's hard for any Republicans here to believe, but I was considered at the time to be one of the most conservative right-wing guys. There wasn't an agency I didn't want to demolish. I wanted to balance the budget. That was my obsession. But you know what I did every day that I came on the House floor? I went over and I sat with Democrats because I knew I wasn't going to get anything done unless I sat down and made friends with Democrats. Also, just to be honest with you, they were a lot more interesting than my Republican brethren and sisters. So I have a lot of people that have been in Congress over the past decade that say, Joe, you would not want to be here now. It's gotten so miserable. I think in large part for two reasons. One, gerrymandering, and two, because most of the people there are not there to legislate. They're there. It's like, I heard somebody say it's like a Reddit post. They're there to say something outrageous and to raise money nationwide off of that. I was shocked when I found out, whenever Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene would show up in news stories, I was shocked to see, those people are raising $6, $7, $10, $12 million. And the more outrageous they are, the more money they get across the country. And the reason they can do that is because of gerrymandering. So I'm not sure how we get from here to there. I know the Supreme Court hasn't helped time and time again with gerrymandering cases, saying it should just be up to the state legislatures to decide how they drew their lines, even when I think those lines run afoul of the Constitution. But we need some help with the court. And at some point, man, I would love, if both parties can't come together, a constitutional amendment on it, because gerrymandering is right now one of the biggest drivers of extremism in American politics.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for that. And I think you're right on that there is a significant issue there. But as I was listening to earlier, one of the things that I think was an undercurrent, I might get to a question, it might be kind of a big question. One of the things that I think is an undercurrent of a lot of what you were talking about as you were first speaking is accountability. And I think in the camp of doom, which is where I am a lot of days. Yes.
By the way, excuse me just 1 second. I just have to do a straw vote here. How many people think we're all doomed like Mika?
It depends.
How many are optimistic like me and think we're going to get through this and be stronger in the end?
So
I had to add that phrase at the end. Okay, I got a couple here. I see a couple here. All right, there's some there.
So here,
Okay, so go
here's
ahead.
something that I think would help a lot of people in having some optimism is real accountability.
Yeah.
If we could see that, if we could see real accountability, I'll go back.
What does that look like?
So, all right, 2008 housing crash. How many people went to jail? Zero. Right? There's zero accountability. I think that we're on a trajectory right now where we're seeing less and less and less accountability. We have a president with 34 felony convictions who is president with those felony convictions. There was no there was no accountability from the Senate when he was put forth with articles of impeachment. We seem to be having less
Adjudicated rapist.
right, an adjudicated rapist. We
Well,
don't have accountability
Found
in a
liable
civil
of sexual abuse
in a civil court.
accused of rape. Yeah. That's the,
But
Well, and the judge said, and I know this is a lawyer to say this, and the judge said that what he did would be considered rape
Right.
in just about every other arena. But go ahead.
Yeah.
So no accountability.
I guess if I'm going to ask the question that has to do with this aspect of accountability, because I think accountability to me would create a lot of optimism. If I could see something was happening to those that are doing harm, actually happening, then I would have more optimism. So how do we get to more accountability? This is so big, right? Like this isn't
Right.
about just this upcoming election. This isn't about this current
Right.
president. This is about what I feel is a trajectory of just less and less accountability for the harm and the wrongs that are being done. And it breeds hopelessness.
Right. Well, I agree with you. Let's go back to 2008. I completely agree with you. In 2008, people should have been sent to jail. They destroyed retirements. They destroyed people's lives. They knew what they were doing at the time, and they kept this Ponzi scheme going. So no accountability there, and there should be accountability there. I mean, you look at the Epstein files. I mean, Todd Blanche is going to be the next attorney general. That if you read Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's book, he was leading the cover up in the Situation Room on how they stopped those files from getting out there. And don't even get me started on the $4 billion that the Trump family has made since they got into office. So I understand. I'm saying all that to say I understand that. The part that may not be as satisfying as I hear my wife sighing over my left shoulder is this. We have to get up every day and we have to fight and we have to keep doing it. And sometimes it takes a while. And I think about Abraham Lincoln, who became a state legislator in 1834 in Illinois. And every day he was tacking left and right. He was dealing with a state of Illinois where he had 70% of the people supporting slavery. And Lincoln went left and right and fought and tugged and pulled. And even before the Emancipation Proclamation, Horace Greeley had written him and said, what's going to happen? You know, what will it take for us to end this Civil War? And Lincoln wrote to him back, and it was a very famous letter that was published. And Lincoln said, listen, I'm about preserving the Union. If that Union is half slave, half free, as long as it preserves the Union, I'm fine with it. If it's all free, I'm fine. I'm all about preserving the Union. Now, listen, here's the kicker. Lincoln didn't believe a word of that. In fact, when he wrote that letter, his aide said, "Oh my God, he's going to sign the Emancipation Proclamation," because Lincoln knew he had to basically defang the radicals in his own party, the radicals in the other party, to say, hey, I don't care about whether they're slaves or not. I don't care whether they're free or not. I just need to sign this Emancipation Proclamation because I want them to be free, to fight, to bring the Union back together again. That was just his device to do it. But Lincoln fought from 34, as my wife sighs over my left shoulder again, from 1834 to a week before he was assassinated, to liberate the slaves. And he did it. I'm not saying that we have to wait 30 years and get shot in the head for this to happen. But what I am saying is that there have been times, bleak times, and you talk about slavery, just look at the civil rights movement, where it has taken a long time to get there. I think, though, I really think the best thing we can do for accountability is we can go out and vote in the midterms, and then in 28, we can elect people that are going to hold Washington accountable. And yes, something that hasn't happened in a long time, hold Wall Street accountable. And instead of tax cuts for trillionaires, maybe worry about small business owners, family businesses that can't survive. Maybe worry about people that can't pay their medical bills. Maybe worry about people that can't pay their gas bills. Maybe worry about people that can't. I mean, when I was 25, I didn't make a ton of money, but I was able to get a little ranch home. I had a mortgage when I was 25 years old. That wasn't radical. That's radical now.
Mhm.
Yeah, people, I call them kids because they're my kids, the age of my kids. Like, they may not be able to get a mortgage until they're 40. It's getting harder and harder, and middle-class Americans are falling further and further behind. So that accountability, and it's not just ethics. I think it's an economic accountability that we got to worry about. And when people start talking about taxing trillionaires, taxing billionaires, taxing multinational corporations, please don't. I mean, I'm a small government conservative. I fought for lower taxes my whole life. But please don't lecture me about how that's fear-mongering. That is not fear-mongering. The fact of the matter is, my old party has always said they were against income redistribution, but the greatest income redistribution in the history of mankind has happened since the 1980s. When trillions of dollars have moved from the middle class to the richest 0.001%. And I think the biggest disgrace is, and I will just say it, Democrats haven't acted like Democrats. Richie Neal, when he ran the Ways and Means Committee, had a chance to look at carried interest, had a chance to look at the fact that I think most of us here pay 35, 40, 45% in national, state, and local taxes. Well, on Wall Street, maybe 12%, maybe 15%. I mean, I bet you Elon Musk paid a minimal amount of taxes last year. Reason Donald Trump didn't want to release his tax forms because he never paid income taxes like the rest of us. But that's rich Republicans, rich independents, and rich Democrats. And it's just not fair. And by the way, I know nobody cares about this. It's the reason I got in politics in the first place. But we got a $39 trillion national debt. And, we used to say when we were trying to balance a budget, we had to worry about the next. Now, this isn't about the next generation. This is about us. And we can't keep spending more on foreign wars. We can't keep spending more on national defense. We can't keep spending more on massive bloated weapons programs. We can't keep giving trillionaires tax cuts and billionaires tax cuts. We can't keep expanding spending without it all coming crashing down. So, yeah, we need accountability. We also need people that understand we may not be able to balance the budget right away, but we've got to start moving in that direction because we can't afford to get deeper and deeper in debt. Long answer to your very short question. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Whew.
We're liking us off.
I will tell you, I'm distressed with you as you about the Democrats. I'm distressed. I don't see a lot of people. I will tell you though, John Ossoff has looked pretty good on the campaign stump. There's a guy that when he first got elected, I was like, that guy got elected in Georgia? I went on the show the next day. I said, he looks like an extra in that Warren Beatty movie, Reds. Like, I cannot believe he's a senator from Georgia. But you turn around, he's great on the stump. Who was it that he was great with? Jay Clayton, I think.
Yep.
He just grilled Jay Clayton when Jay Clayton.
Secretary Hegseth, too.
And Secretary Hegseth. But when they wouldn't say whether Joe Biden won in 2020 or not. You can go to any courthouse in America and you can get judicial notice that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. 63 federal court said it. The Supreme Court said it. All the election officials said it. And yet Donald Trump's nominees can't say it. That is so pathetic. Let me tell you something. I served in Congress. I worked in Washington. It's not worth losing your dignity over. And that's what I don't understand when I see these people losing their dignity to get a job in Congress or to get a job with a lame duck president. The other thing, by the way, this is another reason why I hope, I guess just because I'm getting old, but another reason I have hope is we told you that we had told our friends in the Obama administration, Washington always wins. We also told them, you think you're the smartest people that have ever walked through these gates, and we love you so we can talk to you this way. But what do you think the Bush people thought when they first walked through those White House gates? They thought they had cracked the code. They thought they were smarter than everybody else. And when they stumbled out of those gates, they had a 23% approval rating. So another reason I'm optimistic is he's a lame duck. 8 years come, 8 years go. He will be gone. He may think he's going to run a third term. He will not. If I actually cashed in on my bets, I would have cashed in a bet that Mika and I had that before the 2020 election, when she said, he'll never leave. If he loses, he'll never leave the White House. I said, I'll bet you any amount because I will tell you what. He'll be arrested if he doesn't. And you are right. January 6th came. And you are right. There was not justice. But what's the old saying? The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they turn. And they will turn. I see you looking at her. Don't you look at her.
Okay.
Look at the North Star. Be healed. That's the Southern Baptist in me. I'm telling you, I'm optimistic.
I'm glad.
But we have to wake up every morning. We've got to work hard. We've got to fight hard and fight hard for this country. Yes, ma'am.
So we're going to close in just a minute. We'll take another question, but I'm just curious who stands out. Just throw names at us. Is anyone standing out as a potential? Bashir.
Andy Bashir.
Yeah. Oh,
Mark Kelly's
Kelly.
good. I like Mark. Yeah.
Shapiro.
Yeah. You know, I like Josh Shapiro. I like Josh Shapiro. I still little disappointed that Kamala didn't pick him to be vice president. Because if she had picked him to be vice president, and we now know the reason she didn't, and they were not good reasons, but if she had picked him to be vice president, she would have only had to win Michigan and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
To stop Donald Trump from getting in the White House.
Does anyone see her coming back?
You know, that's really actually not surprising because that's what everybody says.
I'm curious. Interesting. All right.
We have time for more
one
questions.
More question.
I haven't had a
Do
mean
one
question yet, but
Here it
here it comes.
He looks tough. Okay. Oh,
On the main Senate race.
Are we?
All right, I'm going to upset everybody in the room.
No.
Mika, cut here. So, listen to me now. I'm just going to give you the facts. And you can judge me all you want to judge me. Yeah, I'm going to say it. I'm not going to give any names. I know we're on tape. Is the media going to report on this? Yes. All right, I'm going to say it anyway because I don't care. Mika and I get calls and texts from powerful Democrats over the past month or two, frantic about Graham Plattner. 6 months. Okay. Frantic about Graham Plattner being on the ballot. And 10 days before the last thing broke, we started getting calls. We started hearing from people that wasn't Republicans, Democrats, powerful, connected, rich Democrats were coming into Maine and going around and trying to find any dirt they could find on Graham Plattner to keep him off the ballot. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. As I said, we were hearing this 10 days before the news broke. And so I can tell you, Washington Democrats didn't want Graham Plattner on the ballot. They just didn't. I don't know why. Wealthy, well-connected Democrats didn't want Graham Plattner on the ballot. I don't know why, but they didn't. And so they went around and they found someone that came forward with a story, may be true, may not be true, which leads me to another point. Whatever happened to due process in America? Whatever happened? How can it be that somebody can come forward and a couple of days before he's going to be on the ballot, come forward and say, oh, he raped me? And yet she's told the New York Times she didn't want to use that word. And you look at the back and forth, a lot of the stuff didn't line up. I don't know her. I don't know the other people that came forward. I just wonder, when I hear people in my business calling Graham Plattner a rapist, how they feel if it were their son or their husband, because somebody came forward and decided right before he was going to be the Democratic candidate that she was now comfortable using this term that she'd never been comfortable using. It's a long way of saying, I don't like what happened. I don't like how it happened. And I wish all of that had happened, a month or two before, where there actually could have been an ability for him to fight back. And I don't know him, by the way. For him to fight back and say, this is not true. But now he walks through life with this mark on him, with I'm sorry, Jake Tapper calling him a rapist and everybody else calling him a rapist because of something that happened where none of us were there. But let me be the first to say, if he raped anybody, he should be in jail. So bring the charges and send him to jail. If not, Jake Tapper, keep it to yourself. And I say, Jake, I'm just saying, we've seen this time and time again with other people. They've been accused and immediately everybody jumps out
I think it's
and
really,
assumes the worst.
I will say that we don't know what happened, and I'm not calling this woman a liar at all, but I'm very uncomfortable when the media becomes the judge and the jury. And that's what happened here. And it feels very, it feels like the process didn't work the right way.
Yeah, I will say
That's our opinion. And
as far as the Senate race goes, though, Susan Collins has been the ultimate survivor. When Joe Biden won the state by 9 points, and I thought she was going to lose the state, she won by 9 points. That doesn't happen anymore. That was extraordinary. I will say she's gotten in her outward appearance old. And I say that in a way that, like, Nancy Pelosi, I think, is older than Susan Collins. Nancy Pelosi ain't old. She still scares me. But I'm just saying, after Joe Biden, after Donald Trump, I think it was one of the things that hurt Janet Mills. And we know Janet, we like Janet, but it hurt Janet because Janet was seen as being part of the past. I don't think that this Susan Collins is the same Susan Collins that pulled off that upset victory in 2020. But knowing Susan Collins, she will prove me wrong. Again, yes. You know, this is so weird. It's so weird. I would have said no 1,000 times over 6 months ago. And then I got a call from a MAGA friend. I have a lot of them, actually. A MAGA friend in Texas who said, hey, I just want to let you know, all of my friends, they don't like JD Vance. They're talking about Marco Rubio. I'm like, Marco Rubio? Because I've always seen Marco as kind of, you know, in those circles, squishy, kind of seen as a pretender. That's what we'd always call. If you weren't conservative enough, we'd walk past you in the hall and go, hey, Squish, when we were in Congress. And they go, hey, Squish. But we've always seen him as, you know, not being tough enough to win the Republican nomination, just in his outward. But I heard that in Texas 6 months ago. And then I started hearing it in Florida. And so that's a long way to say, I think so. And I think Donald Trump likes him. Like, Donald Trump's a lot more comfortable with Marco Rubio than he is JD Vance. And I'm not really sure who's comfortable around JD Vance. But well, yeah, Mrs. Vance, yeah. But I will say one other thing about Marco, and I think because Donald Trump likes him so much, there's this great scene in Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's book where Donald Trump's talking to somebody in the White House. They're looking around at the gold everywhere. And they said to him, you do know the next president's going to rip all of this shit down the first day he's in here. To which Donald Trump responded, no, I won't. Cubans love gold. So that was 6 months ago. So that's who Donald Trump thinks is going to be the next president. And by the way, Donald Trump is more popular with his party and electing people than any president in our lifetime. So a Trump endorsement would go a long way. Mika, I still have 1 minute. I still have 1 minute. Anybody else?
Right on time.
I see it. You do not look at her. Everybody's, you ask the question. You be free. You,
Ugh.
yeah. I just want them to hold on. I will tell you why, because when I was growing up in Northwest Florida and I was driving across the Redneck Riviera, when nobody was watching at 4 o'clock, I would turn on All Things Considered. And I listened to it every day. And it was great broadcasting. And yes, they seemed biased to me, but I didn't care because they were great broadcasters. And I will say, I say that about bias. I think the media does a really good job trying to stay as down the middle as they can. It is far different than it was when I was growing up and there were like 3 channels, PBS, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. And I will say this for Fox News. When Fox News broke in 96 and they started being successful, I think it did have other media outlets sort of check their bias at the door and say, okay, wait a second, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Now, I think some of them go too far the other way, trying to be fair. Sometimes there's being objective, and sometimes there's just being wrong. And when somebody's wrong, you've got to call it out. But no, I would hope that they keep up the fight. And I would hope that Democrats, if they win in the fall, I hope Democrats will take that up along with USAID, along with all of the things that the trillionaire with this chainsaw chopped apart. And let me say, contributions to NPR, to National Public Radio go a long way. And watch how I do this. Contributions to this library make such a huge difference in the life of this town. It is the heartbeat of Northeast Harbor. So thank you for your question. Support the library, support the scholarship program, and for the love of God, please do whatever you can to encourage more plumbers, electricians, contractors to move to Northeast Harbor to fix my house. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Are they still in the overflow room?
They're out there. They're
You finish here. I'm going to go shake some hands in the
you
overflow
can't
room.
leave yet. You can't leave yet. Joe. You got to say 1 second. 15 seconds. 15 seconds. First of all, I want to release these people so they can go and open a bottle of wine or whatever they want to do. I want to thank, first of all, Amy Weishart, our director, and her staff. I also want to thank Katrina Carter for facilitating your presence here. Right. And I can only echo what Joe said about continuing to support this 134-year-old library, which is here for this community year-round with programs never as bright and as wonderful as yours, but programs around literature, music, poetry, all kinds of mind-expanding things for the community. It's wonderful. Now, Joe and Mika, we thought really hard about what kind of a gift to get you, but we are this poor little nonprofit, and so we turned down the Stu Band and the Tiffany stuff that we thought about, but we did find something that would take you to places you've never been before, that would inspire you and open your mind, and that is your very own library card from the Northeast Harbor Library.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm going to go say hi to them real quick. I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Class dismissed.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
Yeah, it was great. As usual. It's always insightful and entertaining.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yep.
And I got my
I don't know. It's in his name. You could probably.
But I'm married to him.